I cannot believe that we're already in the back half of 2024.
Are you kidding me?
But here we are. Before you know it, the calendar will be turning again, and that means we are already getting ready for 2025 conferences, and one that I'm personally very excited to attend, again, is the Insights EDU Conference. If you care at all about growing enrollment and building a student-centered higher ed experience, you really should be at this conference. Registration is now open, so secure your spot while early bird pricing is still available. Visit insightsedu.com for more information and to register. That's visit insightsedu.com for more information and to register.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and today we are extremely excited to announce our paid subscription service. By subscribing today, you will get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content. That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp. To become a subscriber, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe to our free email newsletter to learn how you can get access. Again, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again. This is the second one of these I've done today, so I probably will trip over my own words. But there's that many important conversations that have to happen and are yet to have happen, even though we've done 930 episodes. Every single day, Elvin and I talk to someone. Somebody comes to us and says, would you be interested in going over this topic? Or like our guests today, we wrote a consequential book for the industry. And I go, well, we have to talk about this book because if it's going to help higher ed, then it needs to be listened. This episode has to be listened to, and then you should go buy the book. And we're very, very pro helping our fellow book authors. Of course, Elvin and I contributed and co-authored Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, a book that one of our guests, I think she was included in that book. And, look, there's just a lot of work to do in higher ed. And boy, is this industry changing. It's changing structurally. Innovation is necessary and legally. Dun, dun, dun. You can see the transition. For my guests, let me bring in one. I should have had a sound effect. I didn't even think to play it there. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Lou Gard. He's Vice President and General Counsel. And Dr. Joyce Jacobsen, former President and Professor of Economics at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. Welcome to the mic, you guys.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back on my favorite educational podcast.
Oh, Joyce, thank you. And Lou, thanks for coming for the first time here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. The sound effects so far are outstanding. I think it's setting a good precedent for the rest of our conversation. So I'm a first timer, so good to be here. Thank you.
I like your style, dude.
Well, we're going to make sure we keep it going. You guys collaborated and wrote a book called All the Campus Lawyers, Litigation, Regulation, and the New Era of Higher Education. First of all, congratulations, because writing a book is not easy for anybody that's written one. It just isn't. It's different than writing a dissertation or a legal brief. It's just different. And it's hard to get in that mode. And this is an important book because law and higher ed is continually changing, literally by the week, it seems like. So what brought you to the point where you guys said, we got to write a book about what's going on with law in higher education?
Great question. And I have to say it was a great process working with Lou. We actually taught a class on law and economics of higher ed, and we wrote the book basically in real time during that semester. There's nothing like having 30 students sitting there waiting for the next chapter to get you to actually write the book. Yeah. I find that's a great discipline. But I we were just spitballing one day. I said, we have had so many things happen to us, either at the same time, because obviously we worked together for years dealing with issues, or again, when I was at Wesleyan University as provost and dean, all the time Lou was at Hobart, including when he was chief of staff. We've had almost everything you can imagine happen. We should write a book about this. And Lou's like, yeah.
And you're still standing after all those things, Lou.
Yeah, I think Joyce's recollection of it is perfect. There was a day, I think I was in her office, and we were dealing with some particularly crazy fact pattern, just one of those things that kind of makes you laugh out loud. You're like, I can't believe we're dealing with this on top of something else, which was completely, 180 degrees different. And then something else earlier in the day that was even more different. And we're like, this is just crazy. Like, and I think Joyce said, joking, this is lunacy. And Joyce said something like, we should write a book about this. And then, it got just kind of, the seed was planted, so to speak.
And then we did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much is changing. And, obviously I'm not an attorney, but as a chief experience officer of my last institution, I know a little bit about that lunacy. And it seems like, I don't know, more people willing to try to litigate now. Students are, I don't want to say trigger happy. I feel like that's in poor taste, but you get the point. They are quick to jump. Parents too. I don't think FAFSA simplification helped anyone and their thoughts about how they have recourse. What's the state of the mindset of students, of stakeholders now as they interact with colleges and universities? Whoever wants to go first.
I'm happy to try to jump in on that. I think, certainly the book, some of what we put together in the book substantiates your point. Really, we tell the story of this growth in legal issues facing colleges and universities over the last 10 to 15 years. And there's some empirical evidence, I think, that shows and supports that. But, anecdotally, people all the time in my field and outside of the legal profession within higher ed echo the same comments that you've raised. And there a lot has actually been written on this topic of why are we seemingly a little more litigious in higher ed now than we used to. And there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, I think certainly the cost of higher education has gone up. Joyce can speak to that in a much more sophisticated fashion than I can, but the commoditization of higher education, the notion that you're really paying for a product versus an experience sometimes, I think plays into it. So people are more likely to say, like, look, I kept the receipt and I'm not happy with my product. And if you don't make me happy, I'm going to sue you. It's kind of, and it's also, culture wide, I think, just folks becoming more litigious. But, there's been an expansion of, like we talk about in the book, an expansion of civil rights statutes and their interpretation from a regulatory standpoint that has also played into this and across industries. Civil rights lawsuits are among the highest category of lawsuits in the federal court system, and colleges and universities are not immune from that. We're like any other employer. So, I think that is all kind of going into it.
Yeah, we document in the book, we have a little graph where we show this big rise in the number of suits that involve a college or university, and almost always as defendants. Yeah, they're not bringing the suits, they're defending. And just this huge rise. And people have said, well, isn't that just true about society in general? And I think the answer is yes. But it used to be that we were a little more protected in academia and people actually thought we were doing the right thing. Right. And now they don't think that so much anymore. And I think that's a big change. That, as Lou said, it is the commoditization and the cost. Certainly, we saw that with the spate of COVID suits that came out of people saying, well, you went online and that's not the same product as we paid for. And the number of ways that universities had to defend against that. Thank goodness we didn't actually not have that at Hobart Wayne Smith, but many other schools, of course, did have to settle or work through those cases.
Higher ed is an industry, like any other, tries to control expenses. And one of the areas that will ebb and flow is the in-house counsel versus contracting all your legal concerns. Do you think the increase in the litigious nature of, and by the way, I was going to say litigious, but I just couldn't think of the word. But do you think the increase in the litigious nature of people is a point that I don't know, catalyzes the institutional need for an in-house attorney? Like if you can afford, if you got to figure out a way to have somebody in-house, because it's not just students, right? That's the first thing you can think about. You've got employment law, you've got students and the impact, and you think about mental health and stuff going on now, like, all the bits that are associated with just the day-to-day legal concerns of doctor's notes, and whether you have anxiety, just get down to that level. Then you have capital projects, you've got land disputes, you've got so much encircling a college or university. What do you think about that in-house? I don't want to say outhouse, because that'd be the wrong way to say it, but you know what I mean.
I've thought of it numerous times.
Yeah. What do you think, and what stance do you take?
You want me to say that, Joyce? Or?
Yes. I think.
I think it's something that constantly needs to be assessed and evaluated at every institution, on sort of an annual basis as part of a healthy check-in with senior leadership about how you're allocating resources in this area. That's just in terms of like how you operationalize it and whether you make judgment calls about insourcing certain aspects of legal function or relying on outside focused expertise. It's a little bit of a chicken or the egg question, I think, because we did find data mostly through the Chronicle that showed there was an uptick in demand for in-house legal counsel. So colleges I think from the period over basically the 2010s, there's this pretty sharp upward tick in job announcements signaling that there was some increased hiring and interest to hire in-house counsel. I'm not sure whether that has sustained. I suspect that it has probably plateaued, but continued at a higher level of in-source counsel. There are a multitude of considerations that go into whether or not you want to in-house something or look to outside expertise for it that we get into in sort of the second half of the book. But it's just, I think to try to answer your question at the high level is that it's something that institutions really need to evaluate regularly in light of what their specific needs are. And it's an interesting area too, because you could have one year where you do really well. You come in under budget because you're covering a lot of things in-house and nothing crazy happens. And then, the next year you blow the budget out of the water because some real sort of like black swan kind of legal event occurs where there's no choice but to outsource it, or sometimes you have multiple firms working on something and that gets really expensive. So I don't know if that addresses your question at all, but I think it.
Well, thank goodness for legal insurance too.
Yeah, and Joyce, you can fill the gaps in. I mean, as a former college president, I'm assuming you guys work together.
Sure. He was my DC.
If Lou wasn't there, would that made your job harder?
Definitely.
Easier?
And I think, Lou's underplaying. I think we really make a case in the book that people should have inside counsel, not for every single thing, but you need somebody inside kind of deciding what to hire outside. And we argue it should actually save money in large part because that person can serve as a counselor. That person should in general be part of senior staff. So we argue that you really have to mainstream the legal aspects, not think of it as a specialty area, but it's really a fundamental part of your senior staff picture. And that is, I think, a change for many universities that thought of it sort of like, all right, we'll just go talk to legal after we have our strategy meeting. It's like, no, let's have the lawyer in from day one in the strategy meetings so that they're able to say, here's the legal implications of what you're thinking of doing. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it does mean you should know those from day one. And we do see, there's a big uptick in the membership in NACUA, which is the association for the people working, not all of whom are in-house, but that also tells us that just this area has really grown because the membership has increased. So I think Lou is being a little modest there on how we make internal counsel really is an important aspect in terms of how to control this. Because if you can think up front, how can we do some things that will avoid lawsuits? You can save money by being proactive too.
Mm-hmm. We do make we build on there's been a lot of past work around the notion of preventive law and preventive legal efforts on your campus and how that can help you navigate legal issues when they do arise. And a lot of it's along the lines of what Joyce is echoing, that you bring your legal team in at the outset of a project, not at the end as a rubber stamp, because if you sort of enmesh it in with your project from the get-go, you have a stronger, final product, and presumably you're able to spot some of the landmines that might come up later in advance of having to run out and try to cover yourself paying for them when there's some costly mistake that comes up. So we do give a fair amount of airtime to the concept of preventive law and the virtues of it when it comes to operating.
There's some, I think, expected areas. When you think about a book like this, all the campus lawyers are going to think about civil rights issues. You're going to think about employee issues, student legal concerns. All right, there's a lot around misrepresentation. I think a lot of schools got smacked in the face with borrower defense repayment claims. Didn't know what the heck these were in the nonprofit sector. For anybody that got those in the for-profit sector, you knew what they were. But what about the other stuff? Like, there's this new thing that needs a lot of little legal consideration.
Artificial intelligence.
Right. And if you think about protection of data, cybersecurity, just the email phishing, and how somebody who gives out information due to a phish, I mean, you've got insurance claims you've got to deal with. You've got all of these items. There's a lot of behind the scenes technology legal issues that are coming up these days.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's such a big area now. We were one of the schools that got hit by the big Excelian break-in. So again, we had to deal with that up close and personal, and including the reporting. You have to tell people that the data has been compromised. You have to deal with negotiating with the cyber criminals. In our case, we did not negotiate. We just closed down, and luckily they were caught shortly afterwards. So that was exciting. But that's just the tip. I mean, I don't know how the IT guy sleeps at night, frankly, because every day it's like you're just protecting your campus against this onslaught of enemies. And I mean, there have been cases where schools have literally closed down because of this. And again, they really have no recourse. There's no one to sue in those cases. It was a cyber attack. So that is the kind of thing I would think the IT people are up at night. I think the AI is going to be fascinating. I think there'll be interesting things related to plagiarism and how we deal with that both for students and for faculty coming up, and also how we deal with various types of issues we talk about intellectual property that I think many colleges and universities don't think carefully about intellectual property, who owns it, what is their stake in it. And I think they will in some cases get burned because somebody will invent something useful and they won't have had a stake. It'll be a little similar to what we saw at the NCAA and name, image, likeness. There's going to be big changes in the way these whole areas are conceptualized. And I have to say, it's obviously an area of super concern because one of our big concerns in the book is, do all these pressures make it harder for colleges and universities to do their fundamental job and meet their fundamental mission? And, we talk about even preventative law, but does that mean there's things you don't do that you should be doing, like maybe having more difficult conversations, but you decide not to have those because somebody might sue you? And I think that is what makes this sector so different from, say, worrying about whether a hamburger chain has healthy hamburgers. It's a very different problem because it's about our minds and how we're shaping the next generation. And AI is a scary part of what's going on there, of how that shaping is going to occur.
Lou, what do you have to add to that?
My first thought in that in the prompt to this question was the role of insurance companies, and I think one area for folks who are really interested in tracking the growth in this, you can find a lot out there now about how insurance companies are actually tightening the belt a little bit in the higher ed sector, and that should be the signal to everybody that that claims are up against institutions, and proves our point of this growth in the what feels like legalization of higher ed. So, and getting back to your question about AI and cyber and all this sort of stuff, that's very obvious in the cyber insurance realm, where just I can anecdotally report that kind of the percentage of my time that is spent on properly responding to and thinking about triage of potential cyber issues as it relates to our cyber breach insurer, just over the last 10 years has steadily gone up and up and up, and costs of that insurance for all institutions has gone up and up and up. So, I'm the last person to have any kind of brilliant thing to say about how AI is going to, change the higher ed world, but or cyber, but it's a reality that you cannot escape. I mean, these like these phishing emails just get better and better, except for
some of them are so sophisticated. It's like,
yeah, it's wild. I mean, the ones where the president of Cornell is trying to sell me her welding device, I tend to think that that's like not real. But
yeah.
Every once in a while you get one, hey, can you call me ASAP? And it looks like your boss, and you read it on a phone or whatever, and not on your screen, so it looks extra distorted. It's a really strange world we're in, but
Yep, constant vigilance.
Yeah, you really do at all times. And I know that some companies and institutions are getting much more proactive with preparing you by phishing you before you get phished officially. So that's important. But talk a little bit about, I asked you guys a bunch of questions about what's going on in the realm, but talk about this book. Who was it for? When you wrote this, you had a persona in mind, and why? Why did you write it? Calling all higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. Hear, hear. The Insights EDU conference is back. This is your chance to level up your marketing and enrollment management strategies, and the EdUp Experience podcast will be there once again. Join us at the Ritz-Carlton, New Orleans, February 12th through 14th for an unforgettable conference. Registration is now open with early bird pricing.
Outstanding.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. Are you enjoying the conversation so far? Good, I hope so. Did you know that you can actually hear this conversation early before anybody else and ad-free, so you don't have to hear my voice during these ads? And did you also know that you could get extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. So go to edupexperience.com, that's EDUP experience.com, and become a subscriber today. First, you got to sign up to our free email newsletter, and then you'll find out how to become a subscriber. Again, go to edupexperience.com.
Yeah, I think, we have two audiences in mind. One is the audience of people that, they're preparing for a job in higher ed, or they already have a job in higher ed, really any administrator from the mid-level up, and also people who are thinking about becoming general counsels. So in that sense, I think it's a manual of here's the things you might expect in this realm, and here's how to operate as a general counsel. But we also wanted to write a book that would have a broader reach. And I think, we really did hit the zeitgeist. I mean, this book came out in the spring. There was just so much going on. The president's getting grilled on Capitol Hill. There's been so much more about legislation in particular, and obviously a lot of uncertainty with the elections coming up, that people in general are interested in higher ed. It is an important field, and this is another way of thinking about what's going on in higher ed. So I think it's also documents this period. As we said, we see it starting about 15 years ago, this sort of uptrend, probably with the first Dear Colleague letter related to Title IX. We take that as kind of the starting point of this new age of intervention. And it doesn't seem to matter whether it's the conservatives or liberals in power. Both sides want to control more about what's going on in higher ed. So it is, I think, documenting this period and serves as an important record and something that people should read right now, really, to learn more about what's going on. So we did try to write for a broader audience, but it does also flip a little at the end and be more of a how-to manual. But the front part just really outlines everything that's been happening over the last few years, down to like really interesting little small things that people don't think about, like issues about building naming, whether you can sell art from your art collection, just so many little things that come up that are kind of interesting anecdotes also, but also more evidence about this increased weight of litigation and regulation and legislation increasingly on the public schools in particular for higher ed.
Yeah, I think the intended audience is really like anybody in higher education administration, but also faculty, I think, would in particular find this book of interest if they're, regardless of their level of engagement from an administrative or governance perspective. I think if you're just one of these folks that tends to like just go teach your classes, do your research, keep to yourself, you might still be sitting there thinking like, how did this get the way that it is, right? Why are we the way that we are today? Because it's inescapable, the sense that things have become more litigious or legalized or more bureaucratic from a legal perspective. And I think, the first 200 pages answer that question for people in a helpful way. And I think also for faculty who are maybe thinking about transitioning into administrative roles or thinking about provost, associate provost or provost positions, that kind of thing. It could be very interesting. I think outside legal practitioners were also part of our audience, as well as trustees who are kind of sitting at that fiduciary level, like floating up there, hearing about and dealing with these issues, but maybe not on the ground. I think it's helpful for that segment. I also think, I'd like to hope and think that there are some policymakers out there who might have time to pick it up over the summer or whatever and dig into it. We don't answer every question that we pose, I would say, and that is sort of a policymaker's conundrum. But I think we frame many of the issues from the perspective of people who are good faith, compliant folks that want to develop healthy learning environments for our students that comply with the law. And I'd like to think that we do a good job of showing the tensions, as Joyce said, between the aspirations of the law and the requirements of the law and the fundamental missions and aspirations of institutions, and where those two work together right now and where maybe they don't. So,
yeah, I was thinking too, one of the areas that I know higher ed can struggle at times is developing its own training internally for its administrators. And you think about HR departments being able to have this resource and say, okay, here's basically a reference material of things going on in the industry, and let's do some training around these things to ensure that we don't have these same outcomes, or that we prevent something from happening. And then obviously your higher admin doctoral programs, grad programs. I mean, be able to get a book like this and be, better prepare you for the life that you're going to lead as you enter higher education at a top level. It's going to be really important training. And I don't think it is, I know that there's law training within higher ed programs, administration programs, but I don't know how recent it is. And you look at everything that has happened over the last 6 months, just the last 6 months, it's crazy how everything is unraveling, so to speak.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, people don't think, wow, I wonder how I'm going to have to deal with legal issues when I go into this job, but They do need to be aware and be ready for it. So I do think we're performing a service that way. And I guess with my economist hat on, also, concern about the level of costs that this puts on institutions. I mean, we cite some calculations in our book that the cost of dealing with regulation, the compliance costs, are probably upwards of 3% of budgets for schools. And that's about your profit margin at best for a lot of schools. So it is really adding to this incredible, difficult financial environment that colleges and universities find themselves in right now of dealing with these costs of compliance.
Who published it, by the way? Who published it?
Harvard University Press.
Just going to get that in there.
Yeah.
I would just encourage, for anyone that's going to buy a copy of the book, it is much better for the authors to buy it from the publisher than to buy it from Amazon. I just want to throw that out there for everyone. Amazon takes all of the hard work that the authors put into the book, and they try to just make back the money and time that they put into it. And Amazon takes most. Not that I don't love Amazon, because you sell books, but they do take a large chunk of the money. So order from the publisher. So just throw that out there as somebody that is very aware. When somebody buys my book, I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean I made 2 cents on this sale?
Waiting for those movie rights, Joe. Waiting for the movie rights.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. You title this, the subtitle has the new era of higher education in it, which I'm very familiar with. What is the new era from a legal perspective for both of you? What does that mean, the new era, to you?
Yeah, I think,
you go first.
To try to, your point about the last 6 months and the tumult and turmoil, I mean, let's not sleep on that point. I think today's August 1st, it's Title IX Compliance Day for 26 states in the union anyway. For 24 others, they're just kind of hanging out there. And then for some of the institutions within those 26, they don't have to comply. So I mean, I'm a relative baby, being out of college for maybe 20 years and practice for about 12, 13, but I've never seen anything like this before. Where you have governors of states telling institutions do not comply with regulations that were lawfully promulgated by a federal regulator. I mean, where's your sound effect for that? Like, this is lunacy. I can't even think of it. Like, it's incomprehensible. So, and then meanwhile, you've got this disjointed, like, some states have to comply, some states don't. And it's
let's start the insanity.
Let's start the insanity. It's just, and so that's just today, August 1, 2024. But, and that's,
by the way, the whole DEI stuff too, certain states coming in and outlawing DEI. And then I've heard institutions saying they're going to rename DEI functions something else so they could still operate. And you just go, well, is that law breaking? Should I do that? It's just this dismantling within the different states of DEI, all of it is, it's going.
I think the idea that students might actually have to look up all the legal structures of the state of the school they're thinking of going to is not something that occurred to us even 5 years ago. But now, if you're a young woman, you might want to look and see which states allow abortion, for instance. And if you're a person of color, you might want to know which states still have a DEI structure. So it's crazy that you would have to start thinking about these differences when you're making one of the most important decisions of your life of where to go to college. And yet now this is a whole other factor, is what's the legal structure that your school's operating in. And that's going to vary by state and whether you're public and private or nonprofit or for-profit. So
inconceivable.
It's crazy. And kind of a cognitive burden on everybody on top of a financial burden. And, these ideas of dismantling DEI, does that save any money? No, now they've got structures they're creating to make sure that schools are complying with dismantling DEI. And so if anything, there's no cost saving, it's going to go up instead of down.
Can you imagine that? Like parents sitting around with their kid going, okay, where are we going to go? Okay, we're going to go to this state. Want to go to this school with this many students, and it's got these sports, and they're pro-abortion or anti-abortion and pro-DEI or anti-DEI, or just think about how mind-blowing it is to add those types of things to an 18-year-old's college choice, or even a parent's trying. It's pretty insane when you put it that way.
Yeah. And again, things related to, whether trans athletes can operate in various states. There's another degree for various schools, whether you can be an LGBTQ student and go to that school and have your identity. So the layers of difference are just crazy. And again, I would say impede our fundamental learning and matching process of where you should be going to school. So you've just hit on the head there, Joe. Just in the last year, since we actually turned in our manuscript, not that we didn't foresee some of these things, but not to the degree, like Title VI alone, the degree of stress on campuses for the last year related to issues of both anti-Semitism and anti-Muslimism, it's crazy.
Yeah,
makes your job pretty tough there, Lou.
Well, it's funny you say that. We, as part of the back part of the book, we interviewed a number of folks, some presidents who were lawyers, some former general counsel, some sitting general counsel. And one of the folks we were able to interview is this person who was the first GC of University of Pennsylvania back in the 70s. He's a Civ Pro professor still at Penn Law School, Steve Burbank. And final question of the interview, I said, Steve, would you like to be a GC today? And he said, he kind of looked off into the distance for a minute and thought about it. And he said, we live in an era of counter rights, and the pressures that exerts are excruciating. And then he just said, no, I wouldn't want to be today. So, yeah. So, I think that really, that quote has haunted me ever since. And almost every day I am confronted with counseling on a fact pattern that often involves counter rights to two parties or multiple parties that all have some claim kind of against each other. So, but back to your initial question about understanding what this new era is, I think that was your question.
Yep.
not too hard of a pitch on the book, but I will say that like you could look at the first five chapters of the book explain what this new era is. And so chapter 1, we look at civil rights, right? And so that's all the Title IX pendulum swing. That's the new some of the new Title VI in theory, in the sense of how it's being applied from a regulatory standpoint. That's the Americans with Disabilities Act, all the new more sort of novel ways that that's been applied and impacting campuses. Then chapter 2, we're looking at free speech issues and how that intersects with tenure. Chapter 3, we're looking at basically what happens when institutions get sued, and so the new relationship between students and the institution through the eyes of a courtroom. Chapter 4, we cover admissions, advancement, community relations, where admissions, all the buzz from this year is race and admissions and the impact of that decision, students for fair admissions on campuses. And then chapter 5 is a lot of this governance madness that we've sort of hit on with state actors stepping in an unprecedented way in the governance of institutions, but then also novel things that are occurring where schools are going out of business, and what are the governance implications of that and issues that come up. So that first 5 chapter meat of the book is like the whole shebang of the new era, I would say.
Well, there you have it, everyone. We're going to ask Lou and Joyce to come back for a mini episode just for our subscribers. I want to thank you both for being here and encourage the audience to go out and buy all the Campus Lawyers. Lou said he didn't want to overly plug the book, but I'll overly plug it. All the Campus Lawyers, Litigation, Regulation, and the New Era of Higher Education, available today at Harvard Press if you want to really help out the authors. Amazon if you don't, but still buy it on Amazon, I guess, if you have to. But I want to thank you both for being here, and hope to see you come back for our subscribers in just a minute. Did you guys have fun? Well, you got to talk about your book. That's what I care about most.
It's always fun to talk about our book. There's just so much going on.
It was good to be reminded of what's in it, I got to say.
There you go. Ladies and gents, Lou Gard, Dr. Joyce Jacobsen, both from Hobart and William Smith Colleges, pick up the book, All the Campus Lawyers. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just add up. Higher education is evolving. And if you're in marketing and enrollment management, then you need to be at the Insights EDU conference.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Insights EDU 2025 is happening February 12 through 14 in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is your chance to explore the latest trends in higher education and discover new and innovative strategies to level up your program marketing and enrollment. Hear from some of the best speakers in the industry, from companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and more. Registration is now open, so secure your spot while early bird pricing is still available.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. Did you enjoy that conversation? I hope you did. Did you know that you can actually hear this conversation early on and ad-free? And you can also hear extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content. That's right, original content, and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp. Did you know that? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. To become a subscriber, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com to subscribe to our free email newsletter to learn how you can get access. Again, that's edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com.